coming to you after a 2-week break that I've had. I have been battling through a summer illness, which it seems I am in the habit of having, given I had 2 bouts of a cold over the course of 2 weeks. And this time last year, I was also sick, which is not fun, but at least I get to keep my voice, and I get to still be able to speak so that we can talk together. I hope you all are doing well. I hope you are staying cool in this summer, even if this video is finding you in the southern hemisphere, where it is currently winter, turning into spring. Or if you're watching this outside of August when I am creating it. But nonetheless, to come back to the channel, I wanted to show off a book that I found quite a while ago. I can't remember exactly where I found it, but it caught my eye immediately because it is a book about one of my favorite cities in the world, Barcelona, which is a city in Spain. It is the 2nd largest city in the world. Sorry, in Spain. Obviously not in the world, but the 2nd largest in Spain. And I have had the pleasure of visiting it during a pre-pandemic trip I took with some members of my family. I absolutely loved the city, and I like to share a couple of the photos in this book with you. This is what I, as an middle-class American, would call a coffee table book. This is a photo book with a couple of brief essays. Actually, I think just one essay told in a number of ways, with photos from in and around the city, making up most of the book and most of the story. Right away, we see here that this book is trilingual. If you see here where it is describing the photographers' names here and the publisher here, there are 3 languages in use. In the middle is English, photographs, and published by. On the right-hand side is a language with Han characters, which, for reading this book, I know is actually Japanese and not Chinese. But here on the left side, if you're familiar with Spain, you would think that it might be Spanish. But because it's Barcelona, it is actually a different language called Catalan, which is the language of Catalonia. Catalonia is the region of Spain, the autonomía, as it's called within the Spanish government, that Barcelona is the capital of. And it is a region of Spain that has tried a number of times in recent decades to become its own independent nation, because, well, for many reasons, but it sees itself fundamentally as culturally distinct from Spain, including having its own language in Catalan, which it shares with the tiny country of Andorra in the Pyrenees, and with the far south central of Spain, of France, and with the Valencian community, so the region to the south of Catalonia, which is Valencia, also speaks Catalan, though it is its own separate dialect, and they call it Valencian or Valenciano. As the second largest city in Spain and the largest of Catalonia, Barcelona is a rich metropolis full of vibrant history and culture and architecture. Here are the balconies of a famous house called the Casa Milà, or La Pedrera, which is one of the masterpieces of an architect that you may have heard of before, even if you aren't super familiar with architecture, and that is Antoni Gaudí. Antoni Gaudí y Cornet, who was a turn of the century architect primarily, and a minor city planner, who is known for a lot of the most famous buildings around Barcelona, including a building that we will see from multiple perspectives in this book, which is the Sagrada Familia. He is most associated with the movement known as Modernisme, which is spelled like modernism, but with an E at the end, and is the Catalan version of Art Nouveau, the French movement of the same period, with an emphasis on blending architecture as an art form with artistic and mathematical appreciations for nature. Here we see some of the pinnacles, los pinacles of Sagrada Familia. And let us see if we can find a better image. Because, of course, with it being such a large place, a large building, you get to see so much. There's only so many ways that you can capture the building. I should have noted this down beforehand, but no matter. Here we go. So starting from the left here, we can see La Sagrada Familia in tall. This is the Basilica of the Holy Family. It is Gaudí's masterpiece. And it is a fascinating building to see in person up close. The pictures, I think, can only do it so much justice, although you can really get a sense of scale with how large it is around the surrounding buildings. It is a basilica, meaning that it is an important building within the Catholic Church in Spain. Though it is not a cathedral, because it is not the official seat of the bishop, who is the regional head, if you will, of the church within this portion of Spain that Barcelona maintains for the church. Hence why it's a basilica. This was a building that Gaudí insisted would be built from private funds without government, much in the way of government assistance, which is part of the reason why it has taken so long to build. Even in 2023, it is not yet finished. You can see in this image of the Nativity facade, the first of the major outside facades, predicting the birth of Jesus. How deep and dark and weathered the stone in the facade towers look. We won't be able to see it well in this book because this book is from the 80s and does not contain all of the recent construction that has happened. But if you look at modern pictures of the towers that have been built since then, you can see that they are significantly whiter and brighter. It is quite harrowing to think of people being up in the spires, up in the towers that form the roof of the basilica. But here they are. Let me see if we can find more interior. I'm afraid we'll have to switch to yes. Unfortunately, all that we get is the outside of the basilica. But that's not the end of Gaudí. And like I mentioned, one of his more experimental works and more experimental jobs was as a informal urban planner. Most notably in his plan for the development of Parc Güell. Parc Güell, which was intended to be a development on what was then the outskirts in the hills to the north and west of downtown Barcelona. But with all of the development that did happen, it never came to be, and very few of the houses that were meant to be in this development were actually built. Nevertheless, the park still stands. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it is well preserved in my opinion, though it is quite touristy even for how far it is outside of the strict city center of Barcelona. You have quite a few mosaic works, including the sign for Parc Güell and the wavy seating benches that are ever popular, especially now in the age of social media, with everyone wanting a picture to remember their trip by. Here we have a lizard in mosaic as a fountain. a water feature. We have more mosaics in detail of the wavy bench. And we have a almost Fibonacci spiral in the curve of this roofed arcade, and the curve of the promenade going between the two levels of the hilly development. We have gardens in the park. We have a colonnade, which, if I remember my time in Parc Güell, was intended to be the marketplace, much like a farmer's market or a antique market, with individual vendors having stalls underneath the roof instead of having separate buildings, formal buildings with walls underneath. And we see the remains of a viaduct along the avenue, which have been taken over with climbing vines and aloe plants. Plants that are familiar with the hot Mediterranean climate of Barcelona, which is quite beautiful. Going backwards in the book, we have more examples of Gaudí's work. Closer into the city center, we have the Casa Milà, or La Pedrera, which is now a series of apartments, most of which have been turned over to the foundation that takes care of the house, as the original apartment owners have passed on. We see the various roofs of the Casa Milà. We have the chimneys of the Casa Güell. And we have the front side of the Casa Güell, which has these dragon-like scales and a dragon-like ridge in the back, almost like a dragon's back. And we have more intricate mosaic work along the front, along the facade. of the entire building. Back to the Casa Milà, we can see in the roof of the building how much the building curves and bends organically. It is not as strict and rectilinear as the other buildings of its block, even though many of them were built within the same period as the Casa Milà, which goes to show how innovative Gaudí was both in his time and in modern times. We can also see the chimney figures all clustered together along the walkable roof of the Casa Milà. And looking from street level, you can see the undulating curves of the balconies as well, and the almost vine-like railings of the balconies, really enforcing the theme of the building being inspired by nature and being almost an image of nature within the urban landscape. I should point out that many of the buildings that we've seen immediately, the Milà, the Batio, and the Amatière, are part of a neighborhood called the Les Champs. Les Champs, which was intended to be a planned community in a sense, a planned large neighborhood in well-defined, regular, mostly square blocks. And you can see from the cover how relatively regular the streets are in the Les Champs district. This was the responsibility of an actual civil engineer and city planner named Ildefonse Cerdà, who was the master creator of this rectilinear plan with slightly octagonal blocks which form a stark contrast to the winding roads, streets, and pathways of the center of Barcelona, the center of town, in Old Town and the Gothic Quarter. straight streets and wide boulevards, like the Passage de Gracia, which is one of the main boulevards of the city and of the L'Eixample. Really serve in contrast to the older way, the original way of the older parts of Barcelona, which have older stone, like the Palau Dalmasas we see here. With colonnades like this, and this bridge over the Carril del Bisbe. And old facades like this of the actual cathedral in the Gothic Quarter of Barcelona. Diving deeper into the Gothic Quarter, we see the famous market street of Las Ramblas, which is home to La Boqueria, the famous market which has greengrocers and market stalls for all manner of food and wares to sell. Such as a famous Catalan dish, which is pa amb tomàquet, pan con tomate for Spanish speakers, bread with tomato, which is covered in bread slices, covered in sometimes butter, sometimes no butter, and then tomato juice and pulp, and a tomato slice sometimes. It's not for everyone. It can be either refreshing or rather bland, depending on your opinion of tomatoes or your opinion of the dish itself. Here we also see in the sides of streets, we have little shops, reliquaries, antique areas, and devotionals. This one is particularly religiously focused. And we see in this image La Plaza del Pi Plaza, which offers a glimpse of some of the tight streets, like this one here, going off into the distance, and potentially whatever street this man on the bicycle is coming from, which are quite characteristic of the Gothic Quarter. and of Born, which is an area near the Gothic Quarter, which is also much older in terms of the architecture, but tends to have a bit more of a bohemian spirit and a younger crowd living there. Here we have the coat of arms for La Bogueria, which is that shop that I mentioned. Obviously some regal symbols and honoring Saint Joseph, Sant Joseph. And we also move towards another artist that is well associated with Barcelona, but more in visual arts and sculpture, less than architecture. And that is Joan Mirò. Here we see him as a sculptor with a woman and bird, Donna y Jose. And further along, we should find, there we go, La Fundación Joan Mirò, or the Joan Mirò Foundation, or really the museum to the work of Miró. Very abstract. Most famously, a painter, but also a sculptor. Also playing with natural form, as was Gaudí. And I'll also point out that this museum is on top of the hill that hosted the Olympics when the Olympics were in Barcelona in 1992. The name of that hill is Montjüic. Montjüic. Montjüic, which is a forested hill it reminded me when I visited of Washington Park. For those that have seen my Washington Park video in Portland, you'll recall that it is a well-wooded hill just off the center of town. Except with Montjüic, you have a number of ways to get there, including by cable car from the bottom of the hill to the top. Another cable car from the Barcelona to beach and peninsula. And a funicular rising from the Avenida Parallel to the top of the hill. I don't believe any of these are depicted in the book, though I will check briefly because I don't have all of them memorized. While we're looking, I will also point out the Arc de Triomphe, which, unlike the Arc de Triomphe in France, is much smaller, first and foremost, but also red, primarily red brick. It was built for a World's Fair, I believe, in the 1800s. I don't believe we get a good look at the funicular or the cable cars, but we do get a good look here of the Olympic Plaza at the top of Montjüic. And off in the distance, the Mediterranean. We get to see a sculpture by Pablo Gargallo of charioteers, inspiring the Olympians of 1992. And somewhere here, I want to end on this image. Not because of the Casa Arnus, the the heavily lit mansion and the focus, but for this building in the background. This is the monastery at Montserrat, which is derived from the name of the mountain in Catalan, which is roughly meaning cut mountain, jagged mountain, or literally serrated mountain, serrated like a knife. It is known for having a devotion to Mary, Mother of God, and it was also an important reflection point in the life of many people's lives, but in particular, St. Ignatius of Loyola, a saint that who would eventually found the Jesuit order of priests. And importantly, to his personal journey, Montserrat was where he laid down his sword at the foot of the image of Our Lady of Montserrat. Which was important because he grew up to be with the expectation that he would become a soldier. And at that moment, he officially renounced his previous life to become a holy man, a man in the service of God. And Montserrat is visible in the distance from Barcelona, and it is easily visitable from Barcelona, although I have not had the pleasure of visiting it yet. Those were the highlights of the city as I wanted to show them. We got to see a lot of the work of Gaudí, an exploration of les chambres of the Parc Gothic, and of the work of Mirò. I'll close with a simplified map of the city. Along here is the Mediterranean Sea. Here is Montjüic, the hill of the Fundación Joan Mirò, and of the area, the Olympic area. We have the cathedral here in the Gothic Quarter. We have El Parc de la Ciudadella, which is where the Arc de Triomphe is. We have the Sagrada Família. We have the Passeig de Gràcia. And in here, the entire region, neighborhood, if you will, of Les Chambres. And up in the far northwest, we have Parc Güell. Now, even with all that we've explored today, there's so much more to explore in this city. If you have an interest in Barcelona, and you made it this far in the video, and you want me to cover something that I didn't already do, please let me know in the comments, and I'll see if we can, what I can do to cover this, either cover your topic in either this book or in outside materials. I'd be excited to hear what you're interested in. and what you'd like to see more of. With all that said, I hope you have had a wonderful time exploring Barcelona with me. And I want to thank you for watching all the way. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.